Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
One pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Culture of Change. We have a great show planned tonight. We're going to get into all things American wool industry. We're going to talk about fiber and supply chains and regulation and globalism and climate change and all sorts of fun stuff. It's going to be a good show. How are you tonight?
Yeah, doing good. Yeah, this should be exciting. This is I wasn't expecting this, so I love the fact that we're going to dive into this. And it looks like you were busy.
Yeah, well, I don't know how much of what is going to be in the show notes is going to be in the actual show tonight. I sort of fell down a rabbit hole about the regulatory landscape over wool. I was kind of just looking to see. I went out to see if the Department of Agriculture had put out any press releases lately that speak to the industry and the producers, and kind of discovered some surprising stuff, like 70% of the USDA resources and funding is focused on SNAP, which was interesting.
Wow.
Seems weird. So I kind of went down this rabbit hole. I put it all into a document. I'm going to attempt to make that accessible to everyone in the show notes so they can see. We're going to bring on Annie here. Folks watched Alphas Make Sandwiches earlier today, then they're familiar with Annie. And we talked a lot about soft disclosure and the supply chains and ingredients and, all the challenges and successes of that business and the, kind of even regulatory landscape, a little bit about that. Tonight, we're getting into wool. It's going to be a great conversation. It's going to blow folks' mind, I think, in a few ways. Before we do that, we are going to talk about Scales. The Scales Freedom Collection is where the open ocean meets the red, white, and blue seas we call home. Inspired by salt, air, tight lines, and the rhythm of the tide and waves, this collection channels the spirit of freedom through the lens of a waterman's lifestyle. always referred to this as like performance fishing gear. It's really good quality stuff. From long sleeve performance fishing shirts built for the elements to butter soft tees and hats adorned with bold ocean inspired Americana prints. Every piece is designed to keep you cool, protected, and connected to the water that sets us free. From weed lines to tree lines, we love our freedom. Shop now at badlandsmedia.tv/scales and enter the code Badlands at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. And I would have put on my Gulf of America hat, which is that came from Scales. So folks should definitely, if you want the Gulf of America hat or shirt, it's badlandsmedia.tv/scales. I do not have it because I'm pretty sure it's downstairs on my husband's head. So
Dang it.
yeah. And next, let's hear from Gold Code.
Is your wealth ready for Trump's next wave? Gold loves a Trump headline, and it's soaring. From the day he first took office, gold prices have climbed, gaining nearly $400 per ounce since his second term. Why? Gold thrives in uncertainty. It's a time-tested safe haven, immune to government meddling, a shield against inflation, and a proven way to protect your wealth when markets wobble. With Trump's second term heating up, will gold smash new records in 2025? Nobody knows how high it could go, but smart investors aren't waiting to find out. Take control today. You could even qualify for up to a 10% bonus in free silver. Discover an IRS-approved way to diversify your savings with gold and silver, tax and penalty free. Get your free gold and silver kit delivered straight to your door and learn how you can safeguard your future. Visit badlandsgold.com to claim your kit and start building a stronger portfolio today. That's badlandsgold.com. Don't miss out.
All right. So without further ado, let's bring on Annie, owner of Willow Wind Farm.
Welcome.
Guys, scientist, engineer, animal whisperer, and super cool lady. Happy to have you here tonight, Annie. Thanks for being here. So I want to, one of the things that I didn't know about you before I went out and, hung out with you and we talked about a lot of this stuff is that in addition to the, your farm and what you talked a little bit earlier today about, kind of what led you into the personal care products. But prior to this life, you had you have quite a bit of complex business experience.
I do actually. I mean, I grew up, I actually studied, did the usual. Well, I had a son in there, got married, divorced, and all that. But I have a degree in physics with math and engineering.
No way.
I actually moved to Colorado to get my. Just wait for it, ladies. This is called Youth in Action. I was coming to Colorado because I was going to get my PhD in subatomic particle physics. Isn't that crazy? And I had like 500. I just mentioned this on John when I did that intro on John's on the Daily Herald that day. But I literally had like $500 in my pocket. I was driving an old Civic, and I had a son, a 5-year-old boy, and we didn't know anyone here, nothing. So it quickly became, talk about really, that sort of describes my willingness to be bold. My son has often said to me, "You are fearless." And I always come back to him and say, "Dude, I am terrified." But the thing is, I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm inspired to do it anyway. But anyway, and then I ended up in the middle of the natural food industry, and it was when all this sort of explosive growth happened there. I was working in distribution, actually, learned a lot there, and within a couple of years ended up as an executive of the second largest natural food retailer in the country. I went public with them. And I really had no business being in that position, to be quite honest, but I had 50 people in my department. I ran center store, so all like food, packaged food, grocery, and learned a lot about a lot of things. You learn a lot about supply chain, you learn a lot about cost of goods, you learn a lot about, one of the things that I took away from that was how much pressure there is on the producer and how much income is in the middle ranks, right? So you pull cucumbers from a farmer, he gets 5 cents a cucumber, yet value add something there, throw a little marketing in, and all of a sudden the cucumber's $5, right? So,
Right.
just that whole producer upside down producer thing, which sort of feeds into our conversation, but it really made an impact on me. And it's kind of where I started getting an itch about being self-sufficient.
Mm,
I just wanted to grow my own, just get out of the wheel. I
yeah.
wanted to grow my own food, have my own place, whatever. And that took quite a while. I had to wait for my son to get older, and I can't say that I'm there yet, but that's sort of where my personal mission started. And then you just start thinking about market development. And I had the good fortune of watching a market that's massive now. But at the time, it was, tiny. It was a tiny little thing. And
Did
I
you think
just
it was going to shoot up like it did?
yeah, well, there it happened, and you're in sort of reaction respond mode under a public umbrella, and all of a sudden it's like you better be pulling some magic out of your rear end on a regular basis. I learned a lot about sort of economics. I learned a lot about the big players. I learned a lot about buyouts and flips and all the things that you sort of saw in other industries. It was very casual industry in a lot of ways, not to say that people didn't work hard, because I think people really worked their tail off. But anyway, and since then, just all the change that's happened, it was a real eye-opener. So yeah, I mean, complex, but also sort of novel in a way, because I got to sort of walk through it at a pretty high level. And yeah, I don't know how, I have no idea how any of that happened. Frankly, I have no idea.
God.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
The most unusual journeys.
Busted my tail, applied a little physics, maybe a touch of engineering, whatever.
A little sprinkle of fairy dust.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, I spent 42 years in that industry in a pretty visible way, actually, and got to know a lot of really pioneering producers and watch so I have a lot of familiarity with startup capacity and capital expense, and how quickly you can get crushed by the market. But I got really close to this sort of producer concept, which weaves its way through our conversation, and just how that part really made me uncomfortable. That here you have, we subsidize farmers here because they can't make a living on their own, right?
Yeah.
And we're selling most of that product internationally, and just globalist impact. So when I got to fiber, at age 50 or whatever, and just sort of bolted from the whole mechanism, I was pretty familiar with kind of the pressures, I guess you would say, right? The pressures on the whole process. And I really was kind of determined to A, do it, but B, maybe structure it differently. And it's not magic. That's not a big mystery. I just went vertical. I just absorbed all of it. You just absorb all of it. Keep the middleman.
When people are thinking about wool, you're thinking about, like, I've got these hats, my two new favorite hats. This one's technically Matt's, but it's spent more time on my head because I won't take it off. Burning Bright showed his socks, right? I posted pictures in the Gart chat of the yarn, but I want to go back to kind of where it all starts, and let's watch this.
That bright, kinky, curly.
Oh my goodness.
That's little Gracie.
Yeah.
She's very pretty.
She is very pretty.
Comes by it, honestly.
But going it so talk about fiber and kind of how does this to where finished goods are.
It's a whole develop. I mean, that's sort of the breeding component of it, and of course on the merino side, that's been done for hundreds of years, like since the the kings of Spain and the kings of France traded cheap, and everybody sort of did the sheep thing over there in Europe.
The sheep thing.
Europe.
It's like Settlers of Catan.
But they became very aware of, I mean, the sheep industry in terms of wool development was very intense. I mean, they bred and culled for best characteristics and traits in wool for hundreds of years. And so you have a really well developed fleece in that sort of breed.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so, but merino, I mean, it's sort of difficult to know. I could talk about this for hours, so I'll try to keep it to the sort of functional parts. So I raise sheep, and I raise them for a very specific reason. But sheep wool, like wool, is, natural fibers are just different than man-made fibers in so many performance-driven ways. And they excel at their attributes because they cover animals and keep them warm and cool, And so with sheep wool and lots of natural fibers, the fiber itself is partially hollow. So that acts as this really unique insulator when, spun into yarn and made into products, so that you're basically thermoregulated against the environment. When you're in a warm environment, it keeps you cooler. And when you're in a cold environment, it keeps you warmer. And it's dramatic, the performance difference between natural versus man-made. Man-made is just a dense, petroleum, whatever fiber.
Also bad for your skin, because I've looked into that stuff.
For
it's
your
like
skin.
we need to pay attention
No,
what we're
it's
putting on our bodies.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's like the shedding of the plastic particles.
Yes.
all that
Oh
stuff.
gosh. Yes.
And John and Zach talked about that on Baseless about a month ago. But yeah, the plastic thing is sort of a big deal. And the fiber thing is a big deal, as a total side note, and not something that we talked about, Ash. And I'm not a woo-woo type of person. I've been exposed to lots of woo-woo stuff, but there's a frequency to fiber, right? We carry a frequency that is endemic to ourselves. This has all been studied. It's not creepy, crazy new age stuff.
Resonant.
And fiber carries a frequency. Alpaca, merino, those kinds of natural fibers, those frequencies are up around 5,000, right? Man-made fibers are at 0. So when you're wearing stuff that is dragging your own human frequency down, it's literally compromising your immune system.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if a lot of it's plastic and the polyester, it actually is
Totally.
like keeping you insulated. Because like how we insulate like electrical wires.
Yeah, it also makes you
There's
sweat.
crazy science to this. I love that you know about this. I have never thought about fibers though.
So I don't
this
know
way.
anything about this. It sounds like what you're saying is the synthetic, combining what the two of you are saying, the synthetic fiber is potentially has plastics in
Creepy.
it that would disrupt the frequency.
No, it's basically if you were to sample the frequency of a man-made fiber, you'd come up with 0. It has no frequency to it at all. We carry our own frequency, and I feel like an idiot for not knowing what that is, but it's 100 and something, right? If you're wearing something with a higher frequency, it's literally lifting you up, right? It's lifting you up. If you're wearing a frequency that's dragging you down, it's actually a compromise to, cotton runs about 100. And so let's just say we're at 100. Cotton is neutral to us. I wear a lot of cotton personally in the summer, etc. But when you blend fibers, like if you take a 5,000 and blend it with 100, you don't get the average, you get 100, right? So the lower fibers drag the other fibers down in terms of frequency. Total segue and side note, but that's just another bonus to natural fibers. But it's the performance of natural fibers that I have done a lot of extreme running. I don't competitively run. I haven't run for 5 years since I got on the farm because I don't have time. But I ran 10 to 12 miles a day for like 42 years without taking a day off. I don't care what the weather was. And I got stuck at the top of a mountain one morning. And I was wearing it was about 20 years ago. It's when Patagonia had the, they were talking about poly blends and how they wicked and all of that. Let me tell you something. Those little suckers don't wick. It was 20 below. I was wearing this $180 thin little poly blend layer, and I had to stop because I ran into a pair of fox and I didn't know what was going on. I was like, oh my God, what are they going to do? And so I stopped at the top of the hill. And because I was running up the mountain, even though it was 20 below, I was sweating.
Sure.
And I almost did not make it home because I
Because
almost
you
froze
got
to-
that cold.
I almost froze to death.
Yeah.
Right.
Sweat.
Once you sweat. Yes.
And it was
Oh,
not in
gosh.
fact wicking.
Anyway, I lived up in that location for about a year, and the weather was so extreme. And I ran every morning, whether it was a blizzard or not. And believe it or not, I wasn't the only one doing it. It's kind of a crazy place. It is.
We are dedicated.
Yeah, but I called a friend of mine when I got back to my little hole in the wall and just said, "What the hell? Like, I almost lost my mind up there." And they said, "Dude, merino fiber. Just get a thin layer of merino fiber," and that's what I wore for the rest of the winter. And it never happened again. And the point of the story is that man-made fiber does nothing but sort of, I don't know, it has no sort of compelling performance qualities to it, whereas natural fiber is sort of naturally designed to have all of those performance attributes to it. So that's merino. You take alpaca, and alpaca is actually a completely hollow fiber. It's one of the few, if not the only. I don't know of another one. And so the capacity, the performance capacity of that insulation, it's like 3 times by volume. So you can wear a whole lot less of it and get the same warmth capacity out of it, right? So it has all these other benefits, but from a warmth and performance capacity, alpaca it's unmatched as far as I can tell, which is why it's interesting to me. And all of that goes into the stuff that I try to create out of it. So.
And just jumping off from that story that you told about running and almost freezing to death, I think you told me that you can be wearing merino alpaca product that is wet, and you'll still be warm.
You'd live anyway. You'd live instead of die. You know, you'd live instead of die because it's continuing to thermoregulate against your body and your body temperature, 98 points, whatever. And so you're good. You're good to go. Yeah, even wet. And if you go into a sheep, we shear the sheep earlier. At least I shear them earlier because they're actually cooler in the summer if they have about an inch of wool on them. So the wool thermoregulates against the heat. So I want them to have a little wool on them when it gets hotter out so that they can stay cool. And if you open up that fleece and stick your fingers in there, it is cooler next to their skin than it is in the environment. So it works both ways, works both ways. It's very cool.
That's so cool.
So when we were talking about your products specifically, the products that you're working on making, the vests, the Bird and Bright socks, all of the things, you mentioned your 3 characteristics are longevity, comfort, and performance. Is that right?
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about those?
I want the item to be accessible, which is meaningful for this sort of broader conversation around cash exchange. So I don't want it to be, if I were to make my product and send it to some designer in New York, it would hit the streets at about 4 times the price, right? So if I keep it vertical, I can control the price a little bit better and make it accessible to people. It's still not an inexpensive thing, but at least it's accessible. Durability, if somebody's going to invest in an item like that, and this sort of brings up the whole consumer conversation, we don't necessarily, and no offense to anyone, and I'm not judgy about it, but do we really need the 15 colors of t-shirts from Walmart, or do we need, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's sort of that selective purchase thing.
Exactly.
I'm still confused about this, whether this is a giant psyop by the globalist people or what, but we are certainly driven to be consumers in this country for things that we frankly don't need, and we turn around and throw away about 6 months later is the average according to data, So anyway, my interest is to create something that someone makes a purchase and they have it for 20 years and it's delivering some performance that they actually need. And then there's a tremendous amount of benefits with it at the same time. There's 2 things that I do though that should be pointed out. You have 2 hats, Ash, and one of them is one process and one of them is another process. And there's differences in these processes, which are interesting to two kinds of people, but it radically affects the cost of the item. So
Yeah.
the swirl hat that you have, that is a custom yarn blend. That's like 3 fleeces at a time that goes into a small mill, and they will make yarn for me at my spec. And then that yarn comes back to me. I sell a portion of the yarn, but a big chunk of the yarn that I make goes off to a knitter or a weaver, and those things are made. And so on the swirl hat there, nobody's really getting paid for that. Like my knitter makes $10 to give me that hat. The yarn people, that's $40 a pound to spin that
Yeah.
yarn up. It's
Oh,
that
And it's got silk in it.
wow.
It says on the tag 90% alpaca, 5% gray merino, and 5% white silk.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yep. So that's
And it's
like
beautiful.
that's
It is a thing
high
of beauty.
end materials.
Again.
But I guess my point is, if I'm gonna make a living doing this, I need to be making lots of things and be doing it in volume so that I can generate more of them at a more accessible price for folks. So those two hats are very different. One of them represents a commercial process, and one of them represents sort of a handmade, kind of custom small batch process, right? And I would say my business is about 40% custom small batch, 60%, at least its projection is designed to be that way,
Nice.
Yeah. So, and they both have their values, but my longer term interest really is to get alpaca into the commercial industry so that I can pay an alpaca person a decent wage for their fiber, and B, I can produce something that actually supports me and the operation in the end, right? But it means I have to do all of it. It's very it's very challenging in this country to spin that stuff up, because we aren't getting paid based on the expenses related to the process, right?
Yeah.
And that feels very purposeful to me after having thought about it, knowing that we were going to do this show. I mean, I sort of understand the transfer of business from here to international businesses, but then I started to think, why are they doing that? Right?
Yeah.
Why are they doing that?
Well,
Anyway.
and I think back to you were talking about, do you need, a shirt, a Walmart t-shirt in every color, or should you be buying, products with higher quality products with staying power? For a lot of folks, that's, it's not even an option for them. My kids need shirts and they need them right now. And I can't afford to do it, but that's not, it's the reason that made in America products, and even the wool products, it's not the cost of farming is so high. The cost of farming is so high because of other pressures and regulatory landscape and incentives to drive this production to other places. That's been going on, and it was pitched to us as a collective good. Right. Post World War II, we have to tie all of our economies together for mutually assured economic destruction, so that we don't, go to world war again. Okay. The, people at the time were sold that bill of goods and agreed with it. And then what that has led to over the past 65 years is Americans becoming a consumer nation. We purchase. So I have, loads of beanies, but these two beanies, regardless of the different processes that they have, they're definitely the most valuable beanies that I have in terms of the, they're America first. They're from American manufacturers, and that aspect of it, the quality going into it is better. I could buy a beanie for $5. It'll probably fall apart, and it won't have the the same
in it.
Yeah, it won't have the same performance of regulating my body temperature, because the majority of heat, isn't that true, that the heat leaves the top of your head, right? And so like the performance of this is eons, above the cheap Chinese Avalanche beanie I have or whatever.
No, and one would hope that it would last you a while,
Yeah,
I mean,
so setting aside the the decisions for the people that are like, I have 5 kids and I need to outfit them all in winter clothes, and you're just going to go to Walmart and you're going to get what you need to be able to outfit your kids. For the middle class Americans, there's a mind shift that has happened. I don't think that organically Americans stopped wanting to buy American wool made products, to continue the example. It's the choices that were placed in front of Americans change. Cost of living levers have, gone all over the place, up and down. And while Americans oftentimes were distracted with partisan bullshit or politics, or, being terrified after 9/11 or whatever the things, all of the things that our attention was focused on, the industries were sold out from underneath us. And our purchasing decisions and choices, I don't think that the American desire for quality American made goods went away organically. I think the people were change managed through that.
Yeah, no, I totally,
here.
I'm not knowing the details of how that actually happened. I would have to agree with you. I mean, that at the end of the day, the wool that we're being sold in this country predominantly comes from New Zealand and Australia. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I have to assume that the structure of their economy allows for them to sell that commodity much cheaper than we can afford to do it. And so when you look at the shift from what we're producing domestically versus what we're bringing in from across the way, it's very similar to, except I wouldn't equate the quality components, but it's very similar to, like, if China can put together a air fryer for 32 cents and somebody else is we're selling it here for $99. Somebody along the way is not getting paid, and somebody along the way is getting paid a lot. But at the end of the day, we're ending up with a bunch of cheap goods that people here are consuming like we're on some kind of crack or something. You know what I mean? So, I mean, just the dynamics of that. And now that we have, it's like, I think of the policies in place, sort of the tariffs. I mean, nations they put tariffs in place to protect their own markets, ostensibly, right? I mean, Canada charges huge tariffs on dairy, ostensibly to protect their dairy market. We just, until Trump anyway, have not applied tariffs to things. So, but the thing that's curious about that is that, we're just having this, I'm sort of off topic here, but it's
keep going. This is great.
I think it's kind of related, is like, the Argentinian beef versus, I live in a valley with a bunch of cow ranchers, and I know that they've had pressure in terms of being able to grow their herds and get the kind of consumption they need and the price they need in order to grow their herds, right? So the herds in the US, I think, have diminished in size over the last 3 or 4 years, lots of impacts there. But Trump himself said on Truth Social, and this is where the dilemma lies, that the US ranchers are going to have to figure out how to produce beef for less. They can't produce beef for less if they have the regulatory environment and this kind of restrictions on grazing. And then you have the whole climate change thing. And it's like methane. And, Ash, you and I had this conversation. There's nothing better for the millions and millions of acre of grassland that we have across the country than to have livestock run that grassland. That is just a healthy thing to do.
But they'll fart, though. So we have to stop them.
They're actually replacing carbon in the soil as they consume carbon off the soil. And so that whole thing is just warpo central, And so anyway, that's why earlier I was like, the whole thing feels like a psyop to me. What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, I believe it definitely is, because like the fact that Trump went to the UN and he did call it a climate change hoax. And he said, everybody that wants to get on with this golden age deal, get off of it. It's a scam. It called it the climate scam. So he is aware of that. I believe 100%. he's talked to the farmers. It was his last administration, and understanding how these regulations, basically regulations are the worst freaking thing in the world because nobody gets to vote on them. It's a law, nonetheless.
And predominantly a special interest, right? Predominantly.
Yep.
It seems. I mean, I don't say that with any facts in my back pocket, but I look at the whole shift in this stuff just sort of broader than the wool industry. But the wool industry definitely migrated from here, and it is sort of central. It's central. I mean, Europe, England, they produce some sheep wool as well, but New Zealand and Australia are the ones that are really doing sheep. They're also the ones, besides Peru is sort of the hub for alpacas, just to address a question that came up on the Friday night thing. Peru is really the producer, and they are and God bless them, they have protected that national treasure, which is the alpaca, as if it were the most important thing in their world. And I think in many ways it is. It supports an economy there. It's also just exquisite fiber. They did some exports of animals back in the late 80s, early 90s, I think, internationally. And that's it. We don't get alpacas out of Peru. Our gene base is what our gene base is, and we do with that what we will. The herd in the United States is not huge, and the average herd size is probably 20. Those questions came up the other night.
And how many do you have?
I have 150, I think, right now, 50-ish, including the babies. So,
are you including the in utero babies?
No, I don't even have that many in utero babies because that whole consumption side on the breeding side there's just been a lot of pressure on that market for the last year or so. So I just made a decision to kind of dial that in a little bit. And so I think I only have 8 females bred for next year. We may try to clip some off before the end of this month. That sounds sort of rude. It wouldn't look like that at all. It wouldn't look like that at all, clip some off. But, I got to maintain sort of a certain herd size so I don't lose my mind. And they don't lose their mind, and they don't lose it. But it does 2 things for me. It replenishes the herd. The younger fiber tends to be a little bit nicer, so it feeds a different part of the market. But having a large herd allows me to have a decent amount of fiber. But honestly, I collect fiber because a lot of the alpaca folks out there are very invested in breeding and showing, the bigger farms anyway. And oftentimes they're trying to unload their fiber because the capital expense and investment there is not insignificant, and the time frame is long. I have a couple thousand pounds here that needs to be shipped off to washing by the end of November, but I won't see those products. I might see them quicker because I have a pretty straight line to the supply chain, but if I was doing knit goods, I probably wouldn't see them for a year.
Oh, wow.
So you're investing money in shipping and washing, and then this and that thing, and then this thing and that thing. It's like a 3 to 4 stage process. So you got to have the capital, and you have to be willing to grow slowly. Which is frustrating, because I'm not a very patient person in some ways,
So I just want to read some of these outputs and talk a little bit more about the globalism aspects of it. But and again, I'm going to put all of this into the show notes so folks can go through and see it and see the prompts that I used with the machine and recreate it if you'd like to yourself. But after going through what is the regulatory landscape, and I went through, what's the U.S. the federal regulatory landscape. So you get into USDA and Department of Commerce, Department of Energy, a bunch of sub-agencies within those for things like grading and ratings of different fibers and the trade aspects of it, get into a bunch of sub-industries as well. And then I asked it, what are the net effects? How has looking back 25 years, how has this impacted the American wool industry? What are the trends? What do we see? And here's what we got from a top line standpoint. U.S. shorn wool production is small and has been broadly flat to declining over the past 2 decades. Shorn wool production in 2023 was 22.7 million pounds, down about 2% from 2022. Total U.S. sheep and lamb inventory on January 1st, 2024 is 5.03 million heads, which sounds like a lot of sheep, but that's actually really small, I think.
Yeah, it's really
Right.
small. Yeah.
And there's, you know, few of those are yours.
Yeah, few of my so I only have 20, but they grow about 10
Handful.
pounds of fiber per animal. So the most of that wool stays on my hand goods side. I'm not doing commercial wool. I have other shepherds across the country who have a tremendous amount of respect for, and they run thousands of head up in the Northwest and then up in Montana. So you know, I get my bulk wool from those guys and some finished good production from those guys, which I'm moving into right now.
Nice.
US wool's farm gate value is tiny. 2023 average price received for wool was $1.56 per pound, and the
That's
total value.
unsustainable.
That's what?
Not sustainable. Like, so
Yeah.
what that just said is that if you're growing sheep for wool, you're going to have your lamb market, which is a very high percentage of most sheep operations. But $1.56, that means, let's say you get 10 pounds of wool off of a sheep. You fed that sheep all year. All year.
Yeah.
You're getting $10.
Yeah.
You're getting $10 to $15 for the wool. That's not sustainable unless you're willing to go up the supply chain, right? So you can't just grow wool as a commodity and sell it to a producer in China to make something out of it, right? That's not sustainable. And so what you see is, like, they don't probably delineate or discriminate between hair sheep and wool sheep. A lot of our lamb market actually comes from hair sheep. You don't have to shear them, so you miss that expense. And then you're just growing lambs for market.
Hair
You know?
sheep. So what does that mean? Is that just you're brushing them?
They tend to shed. It's a category.
Okay.
There's different sheep breeds that are not bred for wool. You know, they're not bred for fiber. They're bred for lambs to market. You know.
So
period.
to compare, a price for clean Australian wool can range from approximately $6.10 to $10.55 per pound,
What the
depending on the
hell?
quality and type. For example, 17 micron wool is around 6.10 cents per pound, while the average fine wool spot price is $10.55 per pound. But in America, it's $1.56.
Oh my gosh.
You know, what is that? I don't get that. I don't get.
Makes
Yeah.
no sense.
It sounds like rigged markets to me.
Yeah, so that guy that's growing a sheep for a year and getting 10 pounds, he's making $100 or $160. That's sustainable, right? That is, especially if you're running your sheep on pasture, that's sustainable. $1.56, nobody is motivated to grow wool. You know?
So then, so before I get into the other top line, because this is actually
Except
something
for
that I
me.
wanted to discuss, was so think about what Americans think of as U.S. wool products, right? Like Woolrich is one that comes to mind. I think there's a couple other brands.
Pendleton was the other one. Those are the two biggies, and they're gone. Like, those are owned by other.
Say more about that, because those were American companies. I think there's a lot of consumers that probably think they are American companies.
They were American grown and American processed. So they were grown here and processed here. Woolrich was not a small, that's not a small brand. That was pretty widely known and understood. But they were, probably as all of this, I don't know the exact details of the progression, but I do know that both of those brands are owned by China and Italy now. Probably because they're now using Australian and New Zealand wool because they somehow won the wool lottery somewhere along the way. Maybe there's some subsidy by the government there because it's so central to their production. Who knows? But yeah, so you take people right out of the market, and it's and so same thing. If you're not going to be generating the cash, then you're not going to be doing the breeding, then you're not going to, all of a sudden your sustainable operation is no longer functioning.
Yeah.
So then you're forced to function at the high end. I know there's a good chunk of our wool that goes into New York design products, and there's all kinds of climate changey little, certifications that you can get. And frankly, they're meaningless.
Yeah.
They don't mean anything.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because all of the virtues that that are to be found in the sustainability, climate oriented, climate conscious kind of movement, the solutions to those problems, the problem statement. I am not yielding ground on the problem statement, or suggesting that these solutions are necessary in any way. But the solutions, as they are told to us, to address the global imperative to stop the warming of the earth or whatever, those solutions always appear to result in a larger carbon footprint. For example,
Yes, I
having
totally agree
yeah,
with you.
having the sheep production be here in America for America-made products that would, so one, we're not shipping the fiber all over the world. You're not having to have longer supply chains, greater energy costs, transportation costs,
Yep.
all of those things which contribute to carbon footprint. It seems as though, and particularly looking at this, this example of the wool industry, that it was a global imperative to fix the climate problem, but that was the story that was told to sort of rebalance the globe, right?
Yeah.
Well, America needs to take a seat for a minute, and we need Australia and New Zealand to take this industry and be the lead on this industry for some global imperative that, in my opinion, doesn't have anything to do with the climate or that, none of that at all. It's about business, and it's about creating. Going through this, I think, is really valuable because this is the scale of the problem. One example, right? The wool industry in the US and globally, and we'll talk about Colorado here in a second. But it's a great example of what's happened to every industry. And we can talk
exactly.
Yeah,
I guess
go
that's where my head exploded over the last few days. I mean, I'm familiar with the industries that I'm familiar with, but then I was just sort of whoop, and I was like, what the hey is is going on here? It just feels like some kind of manufactured starvation or something.
Yeah, the Agenda 2030.
Why
I think
do they
you hit
hate
it.
us so much? I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
the state of Colorado hates ranching.
Yeah.
Why?
Well,
do they hate so much?
the current government of Colorado, certainly, which let me read off, because this is after this part of the conversation, I just pulled up the calculator and did some math, and this is kind of mind-blowing. Colorado remains one of the top U.S. wool states, producing roughly 2.1 million pounds of wool in recent reporting. That is the 2024 state level top list. Colorado's wool is an important regional commodity, but still a small share of Colorado's overall agricultural production. So 2.1 million pounds of wool at the $1.56 is $3,276,000.
It could be 30 million. Do you know what I mean? Like if we were paid fairly. Yeah. And
it could be way more too if we were able to grow the herds and put the land to work and incentivize the farmers and support the farmers instead of the corporate welfare, which is what has led to this.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
Got to get rid of the regulations.
Now, we have some pretty good herds up north. They don't run that wool as fine as I like to use it. So I have a rancher out of the Northwest that I use for that stuff.
I like how you have all these sources. Like, I know a guy at the Northwest. So
there's
awesome.
just so many people that are much smarter than me. And once you trip the trigger in any industry, like you step in, there's like this whole world that opens up. And there's nothing really quite like, at least in my last 10 or 20 years, quite like ag. Once you get in the middle of ag, all kinds of things open up. Getting in the middle of ag is not always the easiest thing. I think they're damn protective of themselves. I don't blame them.
They should be.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. All right, so let's see. What else did I want to point out? Over the last 25 years, large-scale textile processing moved offshore, lower labor cost countries. Oh, so it wasn't about climate at all. It was about labor costs and product
money.
Yep.
No, I mean, somebody found a way to make a lot more money doing this offshore as opposed to doing it here. you know.
Well, it's I mean, that's purely, I don't know if I can say purely because I don't know this industry that well, but I did move work offshore when I was in corporate America. It's one of the things I feel like I have to atone for.
Yep.
And it's all labor arbitrage. You can pay if you're paying a team here in the United States to process the fiber and do all the things, you're paying them a living wage and you're under US regulations. But if you go to Vietnam or you go to Uruguay or you go to Romania or anywhere in India, you can your labor margins are way lower and you don't have to give them all the benefits and all of the things. There's not the same labor protections. There's not child labor laws. There's, in some of these countries there is, but oftentimes there's not. And that, that becomes all about margin. You get your costs way, way lower. And then, it becomes the part that's hard to reconcile is the difference in cost of the New Zealand per pound, Australia per pound.
That's surprising to me, actually. I wasn't.
But I wonder how much of that is subsidized as well.
Yeah, probably a lot of it for some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when they said for climate that we had a Chinese imperative, rising China. We all have to get into China. And a big part of that argument that was made to, to the climate people is that we have to get China to not be an emerging economy anymore. We need to get them, brought up to kind of the standards of the regular world so they'll stop polluting so much. But really all we did was explode China's business, and they're not polluting. They're polluting more, and we've all just enabled them to do it. Meanwhile, up until President Trump, America was being held, even, he left it in the first term, but during the Biden administration, being held to the standards of the Paris Climate Accords. And China never has been, because China and India are emerging economies. The hell they are. They're massive economies. They're just really shitty to their people. And, it results in businesses being able to exploit the shit out of things there.
Yeah, it's confounding is what it is. It's confounding. But the impact on sort of the fiber industry, I'm sort of intimate with it at this point. And I'm doing it on a very small scale still, but that's not my intention longer term. But we barely have the structural apparatus to do what let's say I had 40,000 pounds of alpaca that I wanted to send in for fabric. I mean, the system would it would get done, but that would be a burden,
Yeah.
That would be a burden.
Yeah. So I have to imagine that, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, these the number of players in this system, so ranchers like you that are growing the animals that produce the fiber, the shearers, that's a whole profession and industry, right? Totally. The people that then process the fiber into the yarns and the fabrics that go into making the finished goods, all of that has shrunk as a result of very intentional, not just U.S. policy, but Colorado state policy and, state level policies around the country. I ask you, who's doing the best? Is it Texas?
In terms of growing or in terms of processing?
I would say in terms of the industry footprint, market share.
I don't know if I could tell you that.
My gut was going towards Texas because I would think the state level regulatory framework, and I haven't looked into this. I'm just, speculating based on my own assumptions. Yeah. But I would think that the state level regulatory landscape would be more kind to farmers and ranchers.
Yeah, the only challenge with growing wool is that you don't want animals in a hotter environment like that. Yeah. Wool sheep tend to want to be in cooler environments. They grow wool better if they do. Yeah. There's a lot of wool grown here in Colorado, Montana, but Northwest is really a hot spot. And the North, we know what a mess those guys are. The North, so,
Oregon, Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there is some massive production up in the Northwest because that's where my friend Jeannie, and she's responsible for a lot of the sustainability footprint of livestock, that whole development of that sort of working model. Her and her family and their massive ranch developed that in the 80s and 90s, and it's yeah, I mean, it is very interesting to see the way things have been kind of twisted into a particular story. But it ain't, I guess the bottom line for me is it ain't easy getting
Yeah.
things processed.
Yeah.
And it's only lucrative or supportive if you remain vertical. So let's just say I was, you would think that if I was running 600 alpacas up north and I sheared them every year, that I should be able to get a reasonable wage for that fiber. And that does not exist. It does not exist. So when I go out into the world and I say to an alpaca farm, hey, you who has 400 animals, do you have any fiber from shearing that you want to unload? And their expectation is they're going to get $2 or $3 a pound for it.
Yeah.
And yet within cost of goods for materials coming out of other areas, that fiber is being billed at 20 to $30 a pound. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's this huge discrepancy between, sort of the added value and kind of the pressure on the producer. And if prices need to come down, it always goes to the producer. Nobody asks the marketing company to clip an ad or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just something that I saw early on in my career, but it certainly is. I'm so damn determined to do what I'm doing because we have a lack of capacity, probably more due to a lack of volume when it comes to processing alpaca. So Ash, you know this, that I produced a fabric that's 100% alpaca. It is not true that I'm the only person in the wild country of the United States of America that is producing commercial alpaca products. I think I'm the only person, I am the only person that is producing items from 100% domestic alpaca commercially,
Wow.
right?
So fabrics and yarns and
Yeah,
things
the
that
fact
can
no yarn gets
Not yarn.
happened commercially because we have limitations there, and that just has to do with the fiber and how it runs through the system. The highest concentration in a commercial facility, so we're out of mini mills here, we're out of the mid-sized mills. If you're going to a commercial facility, and we have quite a few of them in that whole mid-Atlantic sector of the United States, many of them have gone out of business. That would be another interesting
Oh.
data point, right? That's where all the textile stuff is. And the folks that are working on my stuff, the fabric makers in Massachusetts and the cut and sew folks are out of Fall River, Mass. And there's just, those are old textile areas. These guys have been in business since 1865.
Oh, wow.
They're like the last remnants of sort of the textile industry in the United States. And they don't mess around. And they did a whaling business up until about 30 years ago. And things just started getting pulled away,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it wasn't a cost thing. But nonetheless, the yarn thing is not something that we're set up to do. And so BB socks, unfortunately, are not alpaca. They're 70% merino, 30% alpaca. That's the highest concentration of alpaca that we can spin here.
Talk a little bit more about that, because you explained that to me in great detail about the difference in the, the ability to spin the fiber into.
You just got to picture these wild big machines and you're throwing a bunch of fiber into them and they first go through a carder, that sort of the machine that
Fluff it up.
sends all the fibers in the same direction. And then it comes out in sort of bats or roving. That roving goes into giant spinning machines and it gets spun up. And you could probably find some video online about that. But alpaca fiber, because it's hollow and it's super light, you have to blend it with something, either a man-made material or what I prefer is merino or some other natural fiber. I like merino because it's fine like alpaca, so I get, a nice uniform yarn out of it. But the highest concentration of alpaca that I can put into a yarn with merino, so we'll just call it a 70-30 yarn. The reason I can't add more alpaca is when you send that stuff through the machines, it is so light and hollow that it just, you have to spray it with stuff and recalibrate things. And then the roving goes through and it doesn't work in the spinning machines because the machines are geared for wool, period. And so if they don't have the volume or they don't have the capacity, they can't. You can put about 30% alpaca in merino, and you can still run the machines. Basically, is the bottom line, you know. And for me to show up with a couple thousand pounds of alpaca, they're like, we're not shutting everything down so that we can get your 2,000 pounds through, you know.
Oh, dang.
So there's one group, and I should mention them just because I'm proud of them. It's sort of a silly thing to say because they're far more skilled than I am. So who am I to be proud of them? But they're impressive, and that's Duckworth out of Montana. And they run a bunch of sheep up in Montana and down in Texas, I hear. I'm not sure that's a secret I should be telling. But nonetheless, they are completely vertical. They grow the sheep, they get all their stuff processed, and they have beautiful wool stuff. So if you want to support a commercial wool industry in this country, Duckworth is worth looking at. It's beautiful. They do beautiful things, beautiful performance-driven things. Yep.
Going back to the disparity in the price per pound from America, and this is, merino, I think we're talking about, versus Australia and New Zealand versus here. Is there anything
mad is what it does, but
is there anything that you could you think of or point to that would create a better quality product from animals on that side of the world versus here?
No, except that if they're producing that level of volume, then they've really fine-tuned. But I mentioned it before, a lot of that wool that's being used in commercial goods is likely merino or some sheep breed related to merino. It's the finest, but you can grow different strengths. And because that has been done for hundreds of years, you get a good ram in with 100 ewes and you're going to produce a relatively consistent wool off that offspring. With alpacas, it's not quite that easy, but there's no reason. I know from being involved in my minimal way in sort of the use of herds in Northern California, Northwest, that you can switch up the fineness in a flock in about a year,
Wow.
to bring the fineness down. The rest of it is basic nutrition and husbandry, and sheep are pretty easy runners, they're also sweet as can be.
Aww.
So talk about that from the alpaca for a second. So if you're trying to, think about when you're thinking about the type of fiber you want to produce over the next, however long, that comes down to a breeding decision for you.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And that's sort
what
of
goes into that.
Well, it's a very progressive curve, right? We don't have a lot of data behind it. We have a lot of data in terms of testing fiber, but our original gene pool, not to say that breeders weren't trying to improve fiber characteristics, because they certainly were. We just haven't done it in such a massive number to make a critical jump in quality, right? So you're going to see the commercial colors like white and light alpaca fiber across the country is going to be of higher quality than sort of the colors, which of course is where I focus. The colors are still sort of in process. There's certain areas where we've made some progress and certain areas where we don't. I really rely on other breeders as much as they might rely on me to create sort of incremental improvement in that fiber. Once you produce that fiber quality in a handful of animals, then you sort of have to figure out, how are we really proliferating this with any meaning or value across the herd? And that just takes time. So we've been on this course since we got the original alpacas, 80s and 90s. And I can say for the colors that I focus on, they're actually the most obscure in the whole thing, because I'm just up for a challenge. I just want to beat myself over the head. So I got lucky. I got a couple of really outstanding males in like a poker game, kind of.
A legit poker game?
Yeah, not really.
I wish it was.
No, and those guys, Gracie's dad is one of the best animals in my herd, actually. He brings all kinds of qualities to that color type that are relatively non-existent across the national herd. And so that just sort of gives me a little bit of an edge, but I'm still dealing with, different grades of fiber. You also want to, at least I, as a breeder, it's very complex, the breeding thing, because you have to sort of tackle the things that you think you can make an impact on for yourself and others. So, the Harlequin, which is the spotted animal ash, which you saw, I have one of the bigger spotted herds in the country. At least I have had. There's some other people getting into it now, but to create improvement that's like less than 1% of the national herd. So creating improvement in that color type, it takes a long time. It takes a long time. But I would say that I'm creating animals that are of some degree of excellence at this point, So there's that part of it, and that goes into the whole mix, right? That goes into the whole mix. My finest, nicest fiber tends to go into the hand goods. My other fiber tends to go into the more commercial stuff because it rests there easier. It's also easier for the machines to function around.
How do Harry and BB fit into your category of, the highest highest in demand, most prized categories?
Okay,
of the herd?
so BB actually has, listen up, Burning Bright. BB actually has extraordinary staple length. The blue eye, brown eye thing is interesting to me. Extraordinary looking. He has one bright blue eye and one brown eye.
Oh, wow.
Probably considered a fault in the ring, but I'm curious about it, right? He has extraordinarily long fiber, pretty nice structure, and as a male, in terms of conformation and type and proportion, he's beautiful. Now Harry, the Herald, he is out of a Harlequin dam, who's very dear to me, but his father was a multi-champion white, and so he comes by a beautiful structure.
Harold's father was a multi-champion white. I want everyone to remember that.
Yep. And he has, but you have to understand, Harry sits in a very large pool, right? He is in a very large pool of light males. And so is he at the top of his game? No, he's not. He's interesting to me because he likely has a propensity to throw spots, but he has a quality of fleece that is in the light category. So as a potential herd sire, he's interesting to me. Burning Bright, he has that, there's staple length on that animal that is not matched in my barn. So Burning Bright has really long staple length. So you're sort of picking qualities from this animal and that animal in a way.
Yeah.
Plus, I just like them. I mean, I have lots of animals that I just like to have. I hate
Animal
selling.
whisperer.
I have to sell a lot of animals that I hate to sell, but I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
And I almost said litter. I don't know what the right word is, but how old are Harry and BB?
They are the 2022. They're 3 this year. So hello, folks. They could be breeding by next spring.
Okay, and they not yet, right?
I don't start my boys early. Some people do, and they really push it. I just feel like the animals know better than me when they should be breeding. So, I mean, Harry is certainly showing a lot of interest. BB is a little bit of a shy animal in a way, but he's not. But he's not a pushover,
Yeah.
So when you're using a male for breeding, there's a certain level of, guts, and otherwise you're really having to work with them to get the job done, which is not a bad thing either. So who knows? Next year we could have some very racy films of.
Yeah.
They're both. I mean, to answer your question more directly, they're both beautiful animals. They just have different characteristics that are interesting to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
love that.
they are very cool creatures, alpacas.
Very,
Um,
very cautious, very curious, and they're just all livestock. I'll say this about all livestock: if you're willing to pay attention, there's just no bullshit there. They're about as true in terms of their reflection of you. If you're willing to meet yourself in the barn every morning, then you should have livestock. It's been one of the biggest lessons of my life, actually, having livestock. There's just, if I walk into the barn on the wrong side of bed, they just let me know. They have nothing. There is no aggression or, sort of like they just don't have the same turmoil that I live in periodically. So it's just a really true mirror of where you're at.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love
No,
that.
no bullshit.
It was
It's just
such a
bullshit.
great escape from all the bullshit to be there.
Yeah.
And forgot my phone existed, which was incredible. But I did say also, I think I told the Alphas Make Sandwiches girls this when I got home. I feel like I was at a GART, but the majority of attendees and some of the hosts were alpacas. And aside from this little guy here's
One day
a
I'll
llama,
get to a
but
GART. One day I'll get to a GART.
we're working
Anyway,
on a
I feel like
Colorado one.
to sum it up, just in terms of the globalist conversation, the producer is under pressure here, and they've been under pressure for a very, very long time. And there's something about that just downright isn't right.
Right.
And as we discussed this morning, there's all kinds of reasons. This is sort of a like a talking point out there in the whirling of winds. Keep it local, folks, where you can. There's all kinds of reasons to support your local producers. It may be more expensive, hallelujah, but worthwhile. Worthwhile.
And I bet too, if you're making appropriate quality versus quantity decisions, it's not as more expensive as people think it will be, right?
It's not. It's just I do think that consumptive thing that's sort of been
Yep.
that's infiltrated our whole culture is really part of this whole globalism thing. I honestly believe that we're driven by debt and consumerism, and it's like self-annihilation. I'm not really sure I understand what the positive end game that is there, but in the globalism scheme of things, we are like the market that continues to rake up the credit cards, eats shitty food, and buys crappy end goods. You know what I mean? Like we gotta just step back a little bit, I think, and just take stock. And I'm not saying that in a judgy way. I just think it's hard. They've made it very hard for us to make appropriate choices. And for some reason, that doesn't make any sense to me,
Agreed. And I don't think that we have free markets, right? And so I think there's only so much of this that the consumer's decision can impact, but that so much is not insignificant. And Americans stop if Americans stop, have a more thoughtful consumption philosophy, be more intentional with where and some of these things it's not possible, right? I get that, and I'm not, like as Annie said, I'm not being judgy on anybody either, but there is this, I can just run out and grab this thing and then run back home and it's totally fine, and you don't think about where things come from. You don't think about the quality of what you're purchasing, because it has just we're overwhelmed with goods, right?
Overwhelmed with goods. There's something I haven't quite gotten there yet in terms of what the hook is, honestly, but there's something there. I almost got there yesterday, and then it just whoop.
It's definitely programmed by design. Like they're programming us to be consumers. And from the biblical standpoint, we should be thankful and grateful for what we have and count our blessings. And so it's all about me, mine, how much can I get, more consumerism. And turns out a lot of these products you buy are either created or manufactured to break within a couple of years on purpose, right? Whereas if you have American made, it could last 20 years, So
the other layer on that, I think, is the perception of choice. Right. We want to believe that we're in control and we're free and we have all these choices. So what do? They flood us with choices. You don't actually have a choice in what's going to happen to U.S. agriculture industries or what's going to happen to these animals or what, but you can choose between tide and gain, or you can choose between, you know,
really, no, so good, so good. Yeah.
That I think was a big part of why so many choices is it's part of this fabricated idea that we're actually free. And I think some of us are more free than others. Annie, you're free as fuck. But you know,
on purpose, my friend.
Purpose. Yeah, but that I think it keeps people kind of trapped. And then you add in all the other layers, right? Like the fact that if you spend 7 years or 10 years or whatever it is now in a business, you're vested, right? So then your future, your longevity, your retirement is tied to that business. So you're more likely to stay. And then your benefits, your health care. If what if my kid gets sick? The idea of becoming self-sufficient outside of this system of systems that we have is terrifying to people because so
terrifying.
But so much of what
terrifying.
It is terrifying. Yeah, but so much of what people believe are needs, right? As though access to this rampant consumerism is a need for any of it. It's been a net negative, I think, across the board. Mm-hmm. But we're conditioned to what Abby was saying, right? We've been programmed and conditioned. Humans, and particularly Americans, have been programmed and conditioned since at least the end of World War II that this global imperative is something we have a duty to do. We have a duty to support. I was looking at the regulatory changes over time and just came across this. I don't know, Annie, you could probably provide more insight onto this, but direct support, the National Wool Act price supports ended in 1996.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah, since then, direct federal supports for wool are modest. The structural policy change removed a price floor and left wool exposed to market swings.
Oh.
FSA still publishes weekly wool price against loan info that occasionally provides brief relief, but not large-scale price stabilization. So that's 1996. And then what did we see as a result of this? Well, our wool industries have been going like that ever since.
No, we're just punting. It's one of those things that it's like everything, right? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. This stuff boggles my mind on a regular basis, Yeah. It was one of the reasons why, it was one of the I was very intentional about my intention when I sort of scaled everything here. And it's a trip. I mean, it is really not an easy thing, and sort of requires like you better be motivated. That's all I can say. But it is one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think it just requires a little thoughtfulness. I often think, that there's a misunderstanding about this great awakening, that we're all awakening to the idea that we're going to hold all these bad people accountable. I actually don't think that's it at all. I feel like the great awakening is me waking up to my own level of accountability. And I just feel like it needs to happen one person at a time,
Love that.
Person at a time.
So, and that is how change happens. One conversation at a time, one person at a time, one person coming into a place of self-awareness and deciding to be different at a time.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to hear, we're going to hear about the tallow real quick, and then we'll come back and wrap up.
Go ahead.
Before skincare went synthetic, people used something simple, something real, tallow. Grass-fed and finished beef tallow is packed with vitamins A, D, E, and K. Nutrients your skin actually knows what to do with. It locks in moisture, restores elasticity, and defends against winter dryness. No water, no preservatives, and no BS. Unlike plant oils or chemical creams, tallow mimics your skin's own structure. Elbows, hands, knees, post shave. Anywhere your skin's crying for real moisture. Perfect for gifting or keeping your own skin soft when the cold hits. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off. Ancient Care, modern truth.
Soft disclosure.
God bless the
Softdisclosure.com.
tallow. God
Yeah.
bless the tallow.
Yeah. Promo code Badlands at softdisclosure.com. And in case you missed it, we did Alphas Make Sandwiches earlier today with Annie, all about the soft disclosure, all about the supply chain, the products, the recipes, the process, the successes and challenges and key learnings and philosophies that go into those personal care products. They're absolutely amazing. So make sure you check that out on Badlands, rumble.com/Badlands Media, obviously, and head
And
over
I'll
to
do a
Soft Disclosure.
commercial. I'll
Yeah.
do a commercial for the fabric products that I am completing right now. They're in production. Are so incredibly stunning and beyond my expectation. It's hard to even
Oh my goodness.
talk
talking about
about.
the
it.
best.
Leaves me hanging.
Yeah, so I mean, some way I'm gonna figure out how to bring those to this audience. They're stunning. It's stunning. It's
They're really attractive looking on.
it's
I
3
tried
and a
on.
half to 4 years of battling the system. Not really, but sort of battling
Right.
the system. Anyway, yeah, cool.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful products and blankets and all sorts of great gifts.
Nope,
at
all
Willow
of
Win-
it. The vest,
willowwingoods.com.
yeah, the willow and the vest, the blankets, and the glove inserts. Very exciting.
Awesome.
Annie, final question. What
What is
what do
wrong
you
with you?
No, I would never ask you. Whatever it is, I want some.
Well, we could go on and on about that too.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and we will, because we're definitely going to do more of this. But when you think about the American wool industry, your experience in it, where you're the change that you're trying to make, what do you want to happen?
I just want the there's like two things I would love to see happen. I would love to see oh man. I would love to see some of these producers own this thing from top to bottom, because I think that's what I see in Duckworth. What they've done up in Montana is that they have owned it vertically, and that is a recipe for success. And so I would love to see either the wool growers combine those resources again under a new brand that could be American grown and processed. I just think that would be a huge benefit to everyone.
Resiliency too, right? If you're
just
full stacked like
sustainability,
that.
resiliency. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that harmed probably a lot of ag growers was all of this. Okay, you're the raw material producer, and then you layer on all the processing and sort of value add to the end product, and the producer is buried in that.
Yeah.
They're buried in that. So it's part of that consumer metric, So anyway, I would love to see wool growers, fiber growers, make sort of the, and this isn't always accessible to people. It wasn't accessible to me, but there you go. Where there's a will or there's a way.
Right.
But just to go vertical, just take over the whole freaking thing, and
Yep.
leave the outsiders out of it.
And the
The hell with
globalists
the
will really hate that plan.
Yeah, the hell with the New York designers and the who's whatsits and the who's whatsits. Just bottom, own the thing from top to bottom.
Love it. I think that's probably applicable to other industries as well.
Yes. No.
Can't always be, right?
that.
There will be, and producers need to make personal decisions about how much they want to.
Organic Mills did that with Organic Valley, and I think those, at least 5 or 7 years ago, when I was more involved in the industry, that really favored the dairy. And that was, that was a co-op structure, but more of a, producer owner kind of structure, and that worked. And those guys are everywhere. That's successful. So.
Yeah. And I think too, regardless of which industry we're talking about, if we want to understand solutions and define solutions from a policy standpoint, state or federal policy standpoint, where the advocacy should be, you've got to talk to the producers, not the industry analysts, not the bureaucrats that are responsible for overseeing, the State Department's key experts on wool production. Get out there, Brooke Rollins, and talk to the producers, and let's find solutions that can make American industry great again. There is no greater. When you and I were talking about this, I think I just kind of was mind blown a little bit, and just straight up, this is such a great America First story, and it presents, I think, in a way that's very accessible to people, the true challenges with America First, what the administration, at least on paper, claims they're trying to do. It's something that we should all be on board with, and
anybody can come visit and count the gray hairs and the
yes, but it is requiring you have to shovel poop.
It does. Yeah.
Yes. Make everybody work that comes out.
They all have to work. Yeah.
Top to bottom.
Oh, so just a reminder to everybody, all of the data points and things that we talked about in today's episode will be in the show notes. I'm going to try and get them out before the show. So we'll see if that happens. And so, check there for all the stats and figures and different things on that. You can reach Annie at willowandgoods.com for the products, the whatever's left in stock.
Yeah, you can send me a note, and I might even call you. I've talked to a lot of people, actually.
Oh, fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where people can find like the agro-tourism. If folks want to come visit and check out, do the farm tour and everything, willowandgoods.com, softdisclosure.com, promo code Badlands is where you get the personal care products that we all know and love so well. Abby, do you have any final questions or thoughts?
Oh, just absolutely love this. I feel like I learned so much. And Annie, you make me want to support you tremendously. It's not only what you're doing, it's like your heart behind it. Again, you have this.
I'm totally into it.
You have such a good spirit behind what you're doing, and it's for people's health. So it falls in with MAHA and private companies, and rising above this big giant hold that our government's had on all the agriculture and all of these, with the industry, with the sheep and all of that. So yeah, I'm excited to see. And I just love also how the audience has just really been supporting you. And I told Brad after I got Alpha's Make Sandwiches, I said, honestly, her products are probably the best you can get, because you pay attention to the heat, you pay attention to the chemistry of these things. And like other big companies aren't even paying attention. They're just slapping that label on and putting it out.
There was a lot of thoughtfulness that went into these products. I really do want people to understand that these are not mid-range solutions. They're just not. Yeah. They're just not mid-range solutions, and they should feel really good about them. And I'm always open to feedback and critique. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. All right. So we got to get out of here because Baseless Conspiracies is coming up next, and we'll raid everybody over to there. Hit the thumbs up for us wherever you're watching. Hit the like button, helps us out quite a bit. Make sure that you check out Goldco and Scales, badlandsmedia.tv/scales. And is it badlandsmedia.tv/gold?
Yeah. Goldco.
Disclosure.com, promo code Badlands, and we'll hear from Alpha talking. Oh, actually, I don't know if this one is Alpha talking about Gart. Somebody talking about Gart, and play our outro. We'll get out of here. But remember, everybody, that change happens one conversation at a time. So be brave and speak the truth. We'll see you next time.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here on the sun-kissed shores of Cocoa Beach, where the ocean meets the horizon, the Great American Restoration Tour continues on November 6th through the 9th, 2025. Badlands Media gathers patriots like you, not just to talk, but to rebuild. From truth-telling panels to unbreakable bonds, we're restoring the soul of our nation, one conversation at a time. This is the heart of the Space Coast, where the rockets defy gravity and dreams touch the stars. Feel the thunder of innovation that powers America forward. Together, we're not just healing the past, we're blasting off into a brighter tomorrow. A future where truth prevails, families thrive, and America leads once more. Join us in Cocoa Beach. Get your seat or your virtual stream pass now at badlandsmedia.tv/events. Launch is imminent, and you don't want to miss this liftoff.
As the expression goes, be careful what you wish for. In my former life, I was an insider as much as anybody else. And I knew what it's like, and I still know what it's like to be an insider. It's not bad. Not bad. Now I'm being punished for leaving the special club and revealing to you the terrible things that are going on having to do with our country. Because I used to be part of the club, I'm the only one that can fix it. I'm doing this for the people and for the movement, and we will take back this country for you, and we will make America great again. Because you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to take us out, and it's not going to work. Not going to work. Not going to work. It's not going to work. We're just getting started. The drug cartels are waging war in America, and we will destroy the cartels. You have no choice. That's an army. And I'll use Title 42 to end the child trafficking crisis by returning all trafficked children to their families in their home countries immediately. Never forget, our enemies want to take away my freedom, because I will never let them take away your freedom. I won't. They want to silence me, because I will never let them silence you. And in the end, they are not after me, they're after you. I'm just standing in their way. I always will. And I will fully protect and uphold our great and very important under siege Second Amendment. We will protect. We will protect innocent life, and we will restore free speech, and I will secure our elections. We will secure our elections. If we don't, we are a country in trouble. Our goal will be one day voting with paper ballots and voter ID. Very simple. On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school at all, pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto the lives of our children. And I will not give one penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or a mask mandate. When I was coming down the escalator with Melania, I was already under investigation because they saw how well I was doing in the polls. And it just got worse and worse. And we caught them. We said they were spying on our campaign. It turned out to be true. They had the fake dossier. That turned out to be true. It was paid for by the Democrat Party. It was all fiction. All of these things happened. Impeachment hoax number one, impeachment hoax number two. I've been treated very badly. And I've won every single time. When you say, do I sleep? I sleep. I sleep. Because I truly feel that in the end, we're going to win. I think we're going to win an election the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. I don't think anything's going to stop it. Nothing's going to stop it. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.